Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto awakened every elemental bloodline? Naruto x Hinata Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. The next day was a day off from the academy. Naruto was determined to get as much training done as possible today. After a quick breakfast of cereal and the only fresh apple he had in the house, he made a mental note to buy more. He got dressed and left his house, making sure to lock up when he did. He didn't want the villagers breaking in and trashing his house again. Humming, the blonde walked through the village, expertly ignoring the glares that most of the villagers were sending him. He was going to the training grounds and no one was going to stop him. When he arrived, the Uzumaki began with a set of stretches and a few laps of the field. With his warm-up done, Naruto began to think on which element he should start with. When he had visited the library before, he had also picked up the beginner's exercises for each element as well. Naruto closed his eyes and tilted his head to the side in contemplation. Fire should be good. Going over to a tree, the boy picked up a few leaves. The first exercise for learning to utilize fire chakra was to burn a leaf. Crouching down, Naruto focused. Nothing happened. He frowned and focused harder. Not even a whiff of smoke. Scowling, the Uzumaki continued trying to burn the leaf. Nay, a few months later, Naruto had finally gotten to the point where he could start learning jutsu. From reading the scrolls, the blonde knew that the fireball jutsu was the easiest fire jutsu there was, and was determined to master it quickly. He knew from the scroll what the hand signs were, and had gotten relatively fast with them. Now he was ready to try the actual jutsu. Standing on the shore of a lake, the blonde boy began weaving the hand signs. Then he followed what the scroll had said: mold the chakra in his stomach, take a deep breath, bring the chakra into his chest, then up the throat and out the mouth as flames. Taking a deep breath, Naruto blew out strongly. The flames came out of his mouth, then they twisted and exploded in his face. Naruto cried out as he was blown back and hit the ground with a loud thud. Standing up, the Uzumaki scowled. What the hell? I followed the instructions perfectly, he exclaimed in frustration. Naruto. A familiar voice called from behind him. Yelping in surprise, Naruto whirled around to find Sasuke standing behind him with a confused expression on his face. The Uchiha looked over the blonde's scorched appearance. Training again? He asked curiously. Naruto thought for a moment, before nodding. Yes. Hey, the fireball jutsu is an Uchiha jutsu, isn't it? You know it, right? He asked. Sasuke nodded. Yes, it's a rite of passage for all Uchiha to show that they are an adult. I learned it when I was 7. He looked his friend over closer. You've been trying to learn it? It wasn't a question. Sasuke's eyebrow rose. Do you even have a fire nature? He asked curiously. Yes, I have a fire nature. I wouldn't be trying to learn a fire-style jutsu if I didn't, you know, he replied. Sasuke smiled apologetically. Sorry, I didn't mean it like that, Naruto. I was just curious, that's all, he apologized. Naruto shook his head. No, it's all right. So, can you help me? He asked. The black-haired boy nodded. First, show me your fireball jutsu, he requested. The blonde complied and formed the hand signs. Then he repeated his earlier actions and blew out a large fireball which promptly exploded again. Naruto growled. He was so glad that his new clothes were as durable as they were. Sasuke helped his friend up. Well, from what I could tell, things went well right up until you tried to expel the jutsu from your mouth. When that happened, the chakra that created it up went out of control and made the fireball destabilize and explode, he stated factually. Naruto's sweat dropped slightly. Then, that means that my control is still too bad? He asked. When Sasuke nodded, Naruto sighed with a twitching eyebrow. Okay, fine, I guess that I could go mutilate some more leaves, he said dejectedly. Sasuke raised an eyebrow. What about tree walking? Wouldn't that improve your control faster? He asked. Naruto froze. A drop of sweat slid down the back of his head before he slapped his forehead with his hand. Why didn't I think of that? He asked himself. Sasuke smirked slightly. Well, I learned about tree walking from some of my older cousins, he explained. Naruto nodded. That makes sense. Well, why don't we do tree walking together? He asked cheerfully. Sasuke stared at him for a moment, then nodded. All right, he replied. Each of them took a kunai out of their pouches and stood in front of a tree. They focused their chakra to their feet, then the two academy students ran at their chosen trees. Naruto got a few feet up, before he slipped. He hastily scratched the bark with his kunai, then leapt off the trunk, and landed on the ground. A few centimeters above where Naruto had marked his spot, the bark under Sasuke's feet suddenly splintered and he fell down to the ground. Seeing this, Naruto once again focused his chakra and ran up the tree. When Sasuke hit the ground and looked up, he saw that his friend had already started running up the tree again. He grit his teeth and got to his feet again, running up the tree trunk again. I won't lose to you, he thought. They continued this for 3 days, only returning back to the village for food. Good thing it was a holiday from the academy right now. Right now they were again running up the trees. Both climbed higher and higher. A few hours later they reached the top. The two boys lay down on their respective branches, panting, but satisfied. Naruto looked over at Sasuke. It's late, we should get going, he said. The other boy nodded. Yeah, except, he paused and looked away ashamedly. The Uzumaki blinked. What's wrong? He asked. Well, I think I used too much chakra. I can't move, he replied. Naruto smiled sadly. Sasuke, you know just how dangerous chakra exhaustion is. You should have stopped when you started getting tired. Sasuke blushed slightly. Naruto stood up and jumped over to the Uchiha's branch. He held out his hand. Here, I'll help you up, you get on my back, okay? He asked with a smile. Sasuke took the other boy's hand and Naruto pulled him to his feet. The black-haired boy collapsed onto the Uzumaki's back almost right after. Sorry, he apologized. Naruto shook his head. Nothing to apologize for. It's fine, he replied, turning to face the front. Hold on, he said and jumped down the tree. When he'd landed on the ground, he began walking back to the village. Let's go home, have a bath each, and a nice meal, then we can go right to bed, okay? He asked. Sasuke blinked. What do you mean, we live in different houses? He asked. Naruto looked over his shoulder at his friend. You're too exhausted to take care of yourself tonight, so you can stay at my place, then we can go to the academy together tomorrow, all right? He asked. The black-haired boy blushed. And Naruto, I can go home, you don't have to, he started, but was cut off when the Uzumaki turned and glared lightly at him. You couldn't even stand up, Sasuke. There is no way that you could make it all the way back to your compound and take care of yourself tonight without something happening to you, so you can stay with me until you regain your chakra, okay? He asked. Sasuke looked down. They were both silent for a moment, before Sasuke spoke up again. Thank you for staying by my side, Naruto. I don't know what I would have done without you. You really have helped me a lot, and I promise, I will always stay by yours, he said, before laying his head on Naruto's shoulder, too tired to even get embarrassed by his own actions. Naruto looked back at his best friend from out of the corner of his eye. I promise, I will always be there for you, Sasuke. I will never betray your trust, he thought to himself. He smiled as he continued to walk towards his parents' house. Naruto entered his house, while Sasuke looked around. All right, you can go have a bath upstairs while I start on dinner, okay? He asked. Sasuke nodded and Naruto gently set him down on his feet. The Uchiha slowly climbed the stairs to get to the bathroom. Once he was there, he ran the water and slowly climbed in. Once he was immersed in the warm bath, he felt a lot better. Sighing contentedly, Sasuke began to wash himself off. Back downstairs, Naruto was cooking up a stir-fry for dinner. He hummed softly to himself as he did so. When Sasuke finished in the bath, he wrapped himself in a towel, then walked out to the stairs. "Hey, Naruto, what do I do for clothes?" he called. Naruto, who was chopping vegetables to put into the pan, stopped for a moment. "You can use some of my pajamas, I don't mind," he called back. Sasuke nodded. "Okay, thanks." Then he went to Naruto's bedroom and looked for some clothes that would fit him. He found a simple pair of light blue pajamas and tried them on. A little tight, but they would do for the night. After that he went down the stairs. "Okay, I'm done," he said as he came into the room to find Naruto mixing the stir-fry in the wok. Naruto turned and smiled at him. "Okay, well, dinner's almost done, so why don't you come and sit down?" he suggested. The Uchiha sat at the dining room table as Naruto brought the pan over and severed their food onto 2 plates. Sasuke smiled slightly. "Thank you, Anija," he said, then stopped. His eyes widened and he slapped his hands over his mouth in horror. "Oh shit, I didn't mean Naruto, I'm so sorry," he cried. Naruto looked confused. Sasuke turned away. I should go," he said. Naruto's eyes widened. "No, wait Sasuke, don't leave," he explained, grabbing the boy's arm. Sasuke wouldn't turn to look at him. "Sasuke, what did just say?" he asked slowly, gently. Sasuke gulped, and turned his head to him slightly. I called you Anija," he muttered, blushing. "Do you really see me like that? As an older brother?" he asked. The Uchiha looked down in shame. I have started to see you as an older brother, sort of," he replied. Naruto's eyes widened. "You really see me like that, Sasuke? You aren't ashamed of me?" "I mean, I'm just an idiot. I only just started taking my training and studying seriously, and I have a long way to go before I can even call myself a competent shinobi. I don't deserve your respect or for you to call me your older brother," he replied, releasing Sasuke's arm. Sasuke's eyes widened and he shook his head vehemently. "That's not true. I may have only just started to see the real you, but I know you're not an idiot, and you do deserve my respect," he exclaimed. "You are smarter than anyone knows, you have a will as strong as the strongest Konoha shinobi, and you are stronger than almost anyone here. Naruto, you have shown me that this village is truly my home, and its people my family. And because of that, I have realized just how misguided my clan really was. I may still love my family, but they did not know what was most important. You are my brother Naruto, and I have never been able to see you as younger than me. This is why I call you Anija." The blonde was wide-eyed. "Sasuke, I don't know what to say. I've never been an older brother before. What if I mess it up?" he asked. Sasuke scoffed. "That day that you are not a good older brother is the day I destroy Konoha. In short, it's never going to happen," he replied, then smiled. Naruto chuckled. "Thank you, Ototo," he replied. The Uchiha smiled, a true smile that he'd only ever show to Naruto. "No problem, Anija. Now, let's eat before the dinner you made us gets cold," he said. The two went back to eating the stir-fry and Sasuke was surprised at how good it was. Dinner went by in a comfortable silence and Naruto washed the dishes up when they were finished. Afterwards, Naruto went to have a bath while Sasuke, still feeling tired from the day's training, went up to bed. After washing his hair and body, the Uzumaki got dressed in some clean pajamas as well. Then he walked into his bedroom, ready to sleep. He was surprised though when he saw Sasuke already fast asleep on top of the bed. Naruto smiled softly at his Ototo, and walked over to his bed. He pulled the covers back on his side and laid down, pulling the blankets over the both of them. Sasuke groaned slightly and turned to face him in the bed, his face twisted and pained. Without thinking, Naruto took one of the other boy's hands and wrapped his other arm around the Uchiha's back, pulling him closer. Sasuke buried his face in Naruto's chest and calmed almost instantly. Feeling the even breaths on his chest, and feeling his own eyes become heavy, Naruto closed his eyes and relaxed. Soon enough the Uzumaki was fast asleep himself. Nay, the next day after getting ready, the two boys walked to the lake together. Naruto stood on the pier and flexed his fingers. Sasuke watched intently from next to the other boy. Forming the hand signs for the jutsu, Naruto took a deep breath, fire style, fireball jutsu. He shouted the name of the technique in his mind. Then he blew out as hard as he could. To his surprise, a medium-sized fireball was blown out of his mouth and over the water. When the technique ended, Naruto grinned in excitement. I did it. Who cares if it's not complete yet, I managed to create a fireball, he cried, fist pumping the air. Naruto turned to Sasuke. Hey, thanks Ototo, he replied. The black-haired boy smirked slightly. Don't worry about it, I'm just glad I was able to help you, he replied. Naruto grinned. You wanna go get some ramen from Ichiraku's to celebrate? He asked. Sasuke thought for a while. Alright, but I'm not that big a fan of ramen, so I might only get one bowl, and something else, he replied. The two boys walked to Ichiraku, while the villagers all glared at Naruto. The Uzumaki did his best to ignore them, while Sasuke was becoming angry at the way they were looking at his ninja. He would have attacked some of them if Naruto hadn't grabbed his arm and held him back. Why are they glaring at you like that, ninja? It's not right. They have no reason to look at you that way, he seethed. Naruto sighed. I'll tell you some other time, Sasuke. I don't want to talk about it right now, he said, really starting to feel the heat of everyone's glares. The hatred for him was almost pliable in the air and it weighed down on him like a heavy blanket of dark feelings. He wasn't sure where this ability to sense the negative emotions around him was coming from, but he did his best to block them out and focus on what they were going to do. They were going to have some of the world's best ramen together, and he knew that Tsuki and Ayame didn't hate him, at least, neither did Sasuke, so he could deal with it. He hoped. They made it to the ramen stand. Hey Tsuki Oji-san, Ayame-ne-san, Naruto called with forced cheer. His hope was if he forced it, maybe it would become real again after a while. Tsuki, a man with tan skin, dark shaved hair and perpetually squinted eyes, turned at the sound of his favorite customer's voice. Naruto, welcome, it's been a while. Haven't gone off ramen, have you? He asked. The blonde shook his head. Of course not, I'll never go off your ramen, Oji-san, he said and grinned. The Ichiraku nodded. Well, that's good. He turned to face Sasuke. And who's this? He asked. Naruto's grin became wider. This is Sasuke Uchiha, my first and only best friend and my younger brother, he proclaimed proudly. Tsuki led up. Is that right? He asked. He looked at Sasuke again. Any friend of Naruto's is welcome here. We might even decide to give you a discount as well since you're Naruto's Ototo, he said kindly. You don't have to do that. Sasuke started, but was cut off. Nonsense. Now, take a seat, boys, and order whatever you want, the ramen chief said happily. I'll have my usual, please, Naruto asked. Sasuke looked over the menu. Can I have some vegetable ramen, please, sir? He asked politely. Tsuki nodded. Of course, coming right up, Ayame. One large pork ramen with extra pork, and one regular-sized vegetable ramen, he called into shop. After a moment, a young woman's voice called back, all right, just a minute. Naruto turned to face his brother. So Ototo, what do you want to do after we eat? He asked. Sasuke thought for a moment. How about we work on our endurance? We could buy some weights and use them to increase our physical and mental strength, he suggested. The Uzumaki nodded. Sounds good, he replied. After they'd finished eating and paid for their food, the boys left the restaurant. Naruto and Sasuke made their way to a weapons store. Entering inside, they looked around. There were all kinds of weapons everywhere, on the walls, on benches, everywhere except the ceiling and the floor. A man came up to them. Hello there. Welcome to my shop. Please, feel free to browse and choose anything you like, he said cheerfully. Naruto nodded. Thank you very much, he replied. The two boys began perusing the weapons on display. Sasuke found a chocodo just slightly longer than what he was comfortable with. The Uchiha smiled and picked it up. He gave a small grin. It felt like it would suit him perfectly in a few years. Naruto was looking around, before he caught sight of a red gunbai with dark blue around the edges of it. It was the perfect size, maybe a little bigger, but still the right size. He went over to it and picked it up. It was a good weight. Naruto gave it a few practice swings. It felt like it fit perfectly in his hand. The blonde grinned. Just the kind of weapon for him. The man came up again. Have you found everything you need? He asked. Sasuke turned to the shop owner. Actually, we were hoping to find some training weights as well, he explained. The owner nodded. Well, I do have some for beginners. Why don't we take a look and see if there are any that suit you? He asked. Naruto chose a pair of arm and leg weights of 30.1 kilograms each. Sasuke decided on weights of slightly heavier design at 35.1 kilograms each. After they had paid for their purchases and thanked the friendly owner, the two brothers left the store with large in Sasuke's case, grins on their faces. The two decided to head to the training field and practice with their new weapons. Sasuke turned to his older brother, an excited smirk on his face. So Ninja, want to have a spar to get used to our new weapons? He asked in anticipation. The blonde Uzumaki returned the look. You took the words right out of my mouth, Ototo, he replied. The two boys stood 5 feet apart. Sasuke slowly slid his chocodo out of its sheath. White Naruto grasped the handle of his gunbai and pulled it off his back. There was a moment of silence, while the wind blew through the area. A single leaf fluttered to the ground between them. The two suddenly shot forwards, ready for one epic spar. Naruto and Sasuke shot towards each other. Naruto raised his gunbai and brought it down to crush Sasuke's head. The Uchiha brought his sword up and blocked the war fan. Sasuke grunted under the weight of not only Naruto's weapon, but also his weights. Naruto suddenly leapt up when Sasuke moved almost too fast for him to see, even with his weights, and tried to cut his brother's legs. The blonde flipped over the black-haired boy, landed on the ground and spun around with his gunbai, using the weight and increase the momentum. Sasuke held his sword in an upside-down hold over his left arm to block Naruto's strike. The strength behind the attack caused the Uchiha to grunt slightly in exertion. Naruto's front leg suddenly snapped out and hooked itself around Sasuke's. He pulled forwards, unbalancing his younger brother and causing him to fall to the ground. Or he would have if the other boy hadn't flipped back onto his hands and pushed up in a double front mule kick. The attack connected with Naruto's stomach, winding him. However, before Sasuke could do anything else, he found his legs caught in a lock with Naruto's right arm wrapped around them. The blonde spun and tossed the Uchiha away from him. Sasuke twisted in midair and planted his feet and hands into the dirt, slowing and eventually stopping his momentum. Feeling a displacement in the air right in front of him, he looked up just in time to see Naruto sending a punch towards his face. Sasuke crossed his arms to block his face and caught his ninja's fist in one hand. Then he twisted his body so that he was using all his weight, and threw the blonde over his shoulder, flipping over to land on the blonde's chest and aiming a punch for his face. Naruto, however dodged the punch by moving his head to the side, then punched Sasuke in the face instead. Sasuke fell back onto the ground, with Naruto on top of him this time. When he opened his eyes, he saw Naruto's fist right in front of his face. However, the Uzumaki stopped just short of hitting him. He then stood up. Sasuke groaned. "Damn it," he muttered. Naruto grinned. "You did really well, Ototo, I'm impressed," he said. Sasuke looked down. "But I only hit you once?" he asked in confusion. Naruto chuckled. "It was still a hit, and I think you did a good job, Sasuke. Don't get so down on yourself," he replied. The Uchiha looked up at him with a small smile. "Arigato Anija," he said. The Uzumaki wrapped one arm around his brother's shoulders. "What do you want to do now?" he asked. Sasuke shrugged. "I don't know, I don't have many hobbies," he replied. Naruto tilted his head in thought. Before he lit up, "Well then, that is what we should do," he exclaimed. The black-haired boy looked confused. "What?" he asked. Naruto grinned. "Find hobbies, of course. It's not healthy for us to do nothing but train all the time," he replied. Sasuke looked thoughtful. "Like what?" he asked curiously. Naruto removed his arm from his brother's shoulder, and crossed them over his chest with a thoughtful expression of his own on his face. "Well, I like learning about the powerful shinobi of the past. I also enjoy gardening, and I was thinking of trying meditation as well," he explained. He turned back to Sasuke. "What kind of things do you like to do in your spare time?" he asked. The Uchiha blushed slightly. "Spend time with you," he mumbled, but Naruto's sharp hearing caught it. He muttered, thinking. "What about something creative? You could learn an instrument," Naruto suggested. Sasuke thought about it. "Yeah, what kind though?" he wondered. "Well, are there any that catch your eye?" Naruto asked. Sasuke blushed. "Well, there is one, but it's a little embarrassing," he replied. "I won't laugh," Naruto said seriously. The Uchiha looked at the ground. "The leaf whistle," he said quietly, but his brother heard it. "The leaf whistle, huh? Well, I must admit I am interested in learning the ocarina," he replied, nodding in understanding. Nay, Naruto and Sasuke entered a music shop. The Uzumaki headed straight for the wind instruments. After a while of looking, Naruto found a purple 4-hole ocarina. The blonde boy grinned and took it up to the counter. When the woman saw him, she sneered. Naruto felt a stab of dark emotions enter his heart and he jolted as though shocked. "What are you doing here, you worthless brat?" she demanded. The cashier stood up threateningly. "Get out of here, you demon. How dare you come into this shop, as if you actually belonged here," she screeched. Naruto felt a heavy dark cloud envelop him and he began shivering. The woman began to move around the counter. Naruto felt tears come to his eyes and he stepped back. It wasn't due to the woman's words, he had heard worse. He wasn't even afraid that she would hit him, as he was usually pretty well protected within the village, despite the cold glares he got. It was the amount of hatred he felt coming from the woman. Most people just ignored him. It was only recently that they actually stared to glare at him as much as they have, but he would just ignore them back then. But this woman, she openly hated him and was showing it. And for some reason, like usual recently, he could feel her hatred. It felt so dark and cold it enveloped him in a world of hopelessness, sapping his will and light. The cashier walked up to him and he stepped back, sobbing softly. His heart hurt. "Get out of here, before I make you, you murderer!" she screamed, raising her hand to strike. Naruto flinched away from the inevitable blow, when he saw a blue blur in front of him and a familiar voice that made his panicked heart calm. "And just what do you think you are doing to my Anija?" Sasuke asked coldly. The woman stepped back, her eyes wide. "Uchiha-sama. What are you doing?" she asked, greatly surprised. Sasuke had his eyes narrowed into a glare. "If you must know, I came here to help my Anija find an ocarina for him to play. When I saw you doing something that looked suspiciously like trying to hit him, so I ask again, just what were you going to do to my Anija? He asked, voice calm, but eyes steely. The civilian woman spluttered unintelligibly for a moment, but went quiet when she saw Sasuke's eyes begin smoldering with quiet fury. She paled and Sasuke walked up to the desk. He raised his hand and placed enough money for Naruto's ocarina onto the counter. Here, take the money, but don't expect us to come back, he said, leaving with his older brother walking behind him and the terrified owner standing shivering behind the counter. As they walked, Sasuke glared harshly at anyone who even glanced their way, causing everyone to look away nervously and avoid the two boys. As they left the majority of the villagers behind, Sasuke seemed to calm slowly. Naruto walked silently up to his younger brother. Hey, he said softly. The Uchiha turned to the blonde and his dark glare melted into a concerned look. Are you all right? He asked. Naruto smiled. I'll be fine, I'm used to it, he replied. Sasuke scowled. You shouldn't be, he exclaimed angrily. Naruto's smile turned sad. But I am for now, there's nothing I can do to change that, he replied. But one day, I will show all of them that I am someone they can trust to protect them, and I'm sure they will change their minds, Naruto spoke. Sasuke frowned. Anija, how do you do it? How do you just take everyone's hatred and continue to want to protect them? I said before that I wanted this village to become my family, but when so many of them treat you the way they do, he shook his head. I don't know, Anija, I just don't know. Naruto placed his hand onto his Odoto's shoulder. Sasuke, I continue to protect them because I know that one day they will accept me because I will show them who I really am. I am Naruto Uzumaki and I will be the Hokage one day, he said in determination. Sasuke stared at his older brother and he could feel his strength of will radiating off of him. He knew that he wasn't like Naruto, but maybe he could try to be. He nodded. I understand, Anija, he replied as they walked back home. Deep within a mountain in the land of grass, 9 of the most powerful shinobi in the elemental nations were gathered. Itachi Uchiha and Kisame Hoshigaki were currently the only 2 there in person. The rest were holograms. Leader Sama turned to the shark man. Kisame, I want you to track down an old acquaintance of the Akatsukis, and find some information about his village leader, he ordered. The blue man nodded. Sure thing, I might find something to shred along the way, he replied, grinning toothily. He then turned to the Uchiha. Itachi, I want you to travel to Konoha and find new information on the Kyuubi Jinchuriki, do you understand? The Rinnegan wielder asked. The elder of the Uchiha brothers nodded. Understood, Leader Sama, he replied in his usual monotone. Dismissed, the leader said. Nay. Itachi and Kisame broke the connection between the others. Kisame stood up and stretched, while the Uchiha stood with his usual grace. Well, good luck, Itachi, but I know you won't need it, Kisame said with a feral grin. Itachi nodded slightly, before he turned away and vanished in a seal-less, soundless, smokeless shushin. Nay. The elder Uchiha found it ridiculously easy to sneak past the Chunin guarding the gates of his old home. As he walked through Konoha, he simply said a genjutsu on anyone he passed to make them see a normal-looking man with brown hair and green eyes. As he walked, he took the time to look around his village. It hadn't changed much since he'd been gone. Suddenly he saw a flash of gold in his peripheral vision. Turning to it, Itachi's eyes widened when he saw his younger brother and the Kyuubi Jinchuriki walking together. Sasuke had a chokodo tied to his hip, while Naruto had a blue and red gunbai strapped to his back. Silently, the double agent followed them. The 2 boys went to a training field and Itachi watched from in a tree as they both removed their weapons and proceeded to engage in a spar. Itachi smiled proudly as his little brother handled his chokodo masterfully. But he was ultimately defeated by Naruto. Damn it! He heard Sasuke mutter. Naruto grinned at him. You did really well, Ototo. I'm impressed, he said. Itachi's eyes widened. Naruto saw Sasuke as a little brother as well. Sasuke looked down. But I only managed to hit you once, he asked in confusion. The blonde boy chuckled. It was still a hit, and I think you did a good job, Sasuke. Don't get so down on yourself, he said reassuringly. Sasuke looked up at Naruto with a small smile. Arigato Anija, he replied. Itachi's eyes widened once more. Now Sasuke saw the Jinchuriki as an older brother. After a moment the elder Uchiha smiled softly. It seemed that his baby brother had another older brother to take care of him while Itachi couldn't. He was happy for Sasuke, really he was. The Uzumaki wrapped one arm around Sasuke's shoulders. So, what do you want to do now? He asked. Sasuke shrugged. I don't know, I don't have many hobbies, he replied. Itachi frowned. Why not? Naruto tilted his head before his face lit up. Well then, that is what we should do. The boy exclaimed. Sasuke looked confused. What? He asked. Naruto grinned. Find hobbies, of course. It's not healthy for us to do nothing but train all the time, he replied. Itachi nodded. That was a good idea. His younger brother looked thoughtful. Like what? He asked curiously. Naruto removed his arm from Sasuke's shoulder and crossed them over his chest with a thoughtful expression of his own on his face. Well, I like learning about the powerful shinobi of the past. I also enjoy gardening and I was thinking of trying meditation as well. He paused and turned back to Sasuke. What kind of things do you like to do in your spare time? He asked. The younger Uchiha blushed slightly. Spend time with you, he mumbled, but Itachi was able to read his younger brother's lips, and by the look on his face, Naruto had heard what he'd said as well. He hummed, looking thoughtful. What about something creative? You could learn an instrument, he suggested. Sasuke thought about it. Yeah, what kind though? He asked. Well, are there any that catch your eye? Naruto asked. The younger Uchiha blushed. Well, there is one, but it's a little embarrassing, he replied. I won't laugh, the blonde boy said seriously. Sasuke turned his gaze to the ground. The leaf whistle, he replied quietly, but both brothers heard it. The leaf whistle, interesting, Itachi thought to himself. The leaf whistle, huh? Well, I must admit I am interested in learning the ocarina, Naruto said, nodding. Nay. Itachi followed the two boys as they walked through the streets of the village. They soon entered a music shop. Transforming into a normal-looking Konoha Chunin, the Uchiha went into the building after his brother and Naruto. He watched as Naruto walked about and examined the instruments. The blonde boy picked up a 4-hole ocarina and grinned. He went up to the counter with his selection so as to buy it. However, when the woman saw him, she bared her teeth in a sneer, and Naruto flinched. Itachi narrowed his eyes. When he was still living in the village, he sometimes had to switch duties with Kakashi, and as such, he would guard the boy. Despite it being the Akatsuki's mission to gather the Jinchuriki, and as such might possibly be his mission eventually, he always had been a caring person. Watching an innocent young boy, especially one that he'd watched over, get treated this way truly did hurt him. What are you doing here, you worthless brat? The cashier demanded to know. She stood up threateningly. Get out of here, you demon. How dare you come into this shop as if you actually belonged here? She screeched. Naruto began shivering. The woman began moving around the counter. Itachi watched as tears came to Naruto's eyes and he stepped back. The elder Uchiha frowned. Yes, the blonde boy was young still, but he had never known him to cry so easily when he used to watch over him. Even then he had mostly tried to ignore those kinds of comments. He concluded that it must be something else that was making him act like this. Get out of here, before I make you, you murderer. The woman screamed, raising her hand to strike the blonde. Naruto flinched away before Itachi saw his younger brother move so fast that to the civilian Sasuke would have just looked like a blur. "And just what do you think you are doing to my Anija?" he asked in a cold voice. The woman stepped back, her eyes wide. "Uchiha-sama. What are you doing?" she asked, greatly surprised. Itachi rolled his eyes. Stupid woman couldn't even comprehend the fact that his younger brother cared about Naruto. The younger Uchiha glared at the woman. "If you must know, I came here to help my Anija find an ocarina for him to play. When I saw you doing something that looked suspiciously like trying to hit him, so I ask again, just what were you going to do to my Anija?" Sasuke asked, voice calm, but Itachi saw that his eyes were steely. The civilian woman spluttered for a moment, but became quiet when Sasuke's eyes began smoldering with a quiet fury, one that Itachi had only ever seen on the night that he was forced to murder their clan. The cashier paled when Sasuke walked up to the counter. He raised his hand and placed enough money for Naruto's ocarina onto the bench. "Here, take the money, but don't expect us to come back," he said, leaving with Naruto walking behind him. Itachi looked around slowly, before sighing, like he couldn't find what he was looking for before exiting the shop, sparing one last glance at the shivering shop owner. Following his brother and Naruto silently again, the elder Uchiha watched as Sasuke glared darkly at everyone who looked at them. The three soon left the crowded areas of the village, where Sasuke slowly calmed. Naruto walked silently up to their younger brother. "Hey," he said softly. The younger Uchiha turned to the blonde and his glare became a concerned look. "Are you all right?" he asked. Naruto smiled. "I'll be fine, I'm used to it," he replied. Sasuke scowled. "You shouldn't be," he exclaimed harshly. The blonde's smile became sad. "But I am for now, there's nothing I can do to change that, but one day, I will show all of them that I am someone they can trust to protect them, and I'm sure they will change their minds," Naruto spoke. Sasuke frowned. "Anija, how do you do it? How do you just take everyone's hatred and continue to want to protect them? I said before that I wanted this village to become my family, but when so many of them treat you the way they do," he shook his head. "I don't know, Anija, I just don't know." Itachi smiled sadly. That sounded a lot like his situation if things had been different. Maybe he and Naruto-kun could have been friends as well. Naruto placed his hand on Sasuke's shoulder. "Sasuke, I continue to protect them because I know that one day they will accept me. They will accept me because I will show them who I really am. I am Naruto Uzumaki and I will be the Hokage one day," he said with determination. Both Itachi and Sasuke stared at the blonde boy, and the older Uchiha could see the determination and will in Naruto's eyes. Sasuke nodded. "I understand, Anija," he replied, before both turned and began walking again. Itachi continued to follow the two boys until they reached a house that he recognized as the same house Naruto's parents lived in before the Kyuubi attack. After they entered, Itachi decided he'd seen enough, and vanished in a smokeless shushin. As he left his home, he smiled slightly. "It seems that you have changed for the better, Sasuke. Thank you, Naruto-kun, for taking care of him," he thought as he began his journey back to the Akatsuki base. Today Sasuke was practicing his leaf whistle, but Naruto was intent on doing something completely different. He was sitting in the forest and deep in meditation. As he focused his senses inward, he suddenly felt his mind pulled away from his body. Naruto's eyes suddenly snapped open upon hearing water dripping. When he saw his mindscape, the Uzumaki's eyebrow twitched. It was an endless stretch of dark corridor with pipes lining the ceiling, and water covering the floor. Seriously, his mindscape was a sewer. Naruto sighed deeply and stood up. Well, he would see about changing it later. Right now he had something to do. Looking around, the boy tried to locate his tenant. Suddenly, he heard what sounded like breathing coming from the left. Shrugging, Naruto decided to follow the sound. Walking through the sewer, The blonde was at least glad that it was only water pooling around his ankles. Slowly he began to see a light up ahead. As he emerged into the light, he saw that he was standing in a gargantuan room with a cage as high as the ceiling, which he couldn't even see as it was so high. Suddenly a growl echoed through the room, causing Naruto to turn his head to the bars of the cage. He walked forward slowly, until he was standing before the cage, but still a distance away just in case. He breathed out slowly, before breathing in deeply. Naruto opened his mouth. "Kyuubi," he said in a clear voice. A low growl sounded throughout the room. Then a pair of red slitted eyes opened in the darkness of the cage. Naruto stared calmly into the eyes. "I'm sorry, but I would prefer to talk to you rather than just your eyes, please," he said. There was a loud grunt, before the darkness in the cage cleared away to show a giant orange fox with 9 long tails lying on the ground behind him. The fox's head was lying on his folded forearms, and his eyes were still staring down at his jailer. "What do you want, brat?" Kyuubi asked, sounding bored. Naruto suddenly bowed deeply at the waist, making the fox raise a brow. "First I wanted to apologize to you. I know that you probably don't want to be sealed into me, but as of now, I cannot release you, as I am sure that you would destroy the village, and I don't know how to release you. Sorry," he said. "Why should I believe your feeble apologies, when it was your own father who sealed me inside you?" the Kyuubi asked. Naruto stood up straight and frowned slightly. "Maybe you don't trust me, and you have every right not to. However, I am not my father, nor am I the people who see you only as a monster or mass of hatred. I don't believe that you are only hatred, as everyone, even the people who hate me, have other feelings for the people they care about, so you must have other emotions as well," he replied. The Kyuubi frowned, while Naruto walked right up to the bars of the cage. "I am sure that you once had people that you loved, and I truly believe that you have the potential to be a good person," he said with a smile. Unwillingly, the memory of an old man with red hair and purple rippled eyes flashed into the fox's mind. "HMPH, you amuse me, human. I suppose I could stand to work with you," he said, closing his eyes. Naruto grinned. "Thank you very much. By the way, what's your name?" he asked curiously. The Kyuubi opened one eye and stared at the Uzumaki Namikaze. "Well, I don't really want to call you Kyuubi all the time," he explained. The fox huffed and the blast of air blew the boy's clothes backwards. He flicked his tails. "I may have agreed to give you my chakra and such if you need it, but I never agreed to tell you my name. Now, leave," he ordered, and Naruto felt himself coming out of his meditative trance. When Naruto opened his eyes again, he saw that it was still early midday. Standing up and stretching, the blonde smiled slightly. The fox really was different from what everyone thought. He wasn't just a mindless monster, he really was a person like any other, he just had a different form. Naruto was glad that he was right, but he still wanted to know the Kyuubi's name. Oh well, he would find out one day. Hearing his stomach rumble, the blonde decided to go home and cook some lunch. That night, Naruto watched Sasuke cook dinner for them, while in deep thought. He wondered if he should tell the Uchiha about the fox. They had been spending much more time together recently, and with Sasuke seeing him as an older brother, things had been going well, but he was worried. What if he told his Ototo about the Kyuubi, and he decided that he hated him for it, just like everyone else? Naruto clenched his fists. It didn't matter. No matter what happened, even if Sasuke decided that he hated him for it, the Uzumaki decided that he couldn't keep such a huge secret from his little brother. Even if Sasuke did hate him for being the fox's Jinchuriki, Naruto would always love him. As Sasuke came over with their bowls of soup, Naruto steeled himself and took a deep breath. The black-haired boy placed their dinner down on the table and sighed. "There, done. Well, dig in, Naruto. I'm sure you want to Sasuke stated with a chuckle as he went to pick up his chopsticks. Soon enough though, the chronologically older boy realized that his brother wasn't eating. He paused and looked up at Naruto. "What's wrong, Anija?" he asked, frowning in concern. Naruto clenched his teeth. No. He was not going to be a coward. "Hey Sasuke, what would you say if I told you that I'd found out why all the adults hate me?" he asked softly. The Uchiha's eyes widened. "You have? Tell me, what could possibly be so bad to make them hate you?" he asked. Naruto shivered then sighed deeply. Sasuke narrowed his eyes. "Is it really that bad?" he asked worriedly. The Uzumaki stared at his hands. They were slightly tanned and roughed up from all his time spent training outside, but they weren't the hands of a monster. What if Sasuke thought he was though? No, he would not back out of this. Sasuke deserved to know the truth and make his own opinions. "Today I was meditating while you practiced your leaf whistle. I managed to get into my mindscape. While there I found something not very good," Naruto began, choosing his words carefully. He didn't want to offend the Kyuubi, he wanted to befriend him. "There's something inside my body, something that was sealed into me a long time ago, and it's something that everyone hates me for," the blonde said with a shiver. Sasuke just stared at his Anija. Where was he going with this? Something bad was sealed inside Naruto's body that made everyone hate him. "What is it, Anija?" he asked, when Naruto paused for a little too long. "Have you heard about the Kyuubi?" he asked suddenly. Sasuke blinked. Yes, the fox attacked the village 9 years ago on October 10th, but was killed by the 4th Hokage who sacrificed his life in the process to do so, he replied factually. Naruto sighed. "Well, most of that is right, except the part about the fox being killed. It couldn't be killed, instead it was sealed inside a living container. However, not just anyone could take the fox's chakra. It had to be someone without fully formed chakra pathways so that the person could adjust to the chakra over time," Naruto explained. "I was chosen for the job," he said slowly, haltingly. There was silence from the other end of the table. Naruto took a calming breath, but his heart was still pounding with panic. "I understand if you don't want to spend time with me anymore, and I'll also understand if you hate me now and think I'm a monster. You're entitled to your own opinions after all, but even if that's the case, I won't. You're my precious Odoto now, so even if you do push me away, I won't let you no matter what. Even if we're not related by blood, you'll still be my brother. Even if you do hate me, I'll always love you, Sasuke, I promise." The blonde trembled slightly as he kept his head down and waited for the shouting, the disgust, the dark feelings of hatred to be directed towards him. However, he wasn't expecting the tackle hug that knocked him to the floor. Eyes wide, Naruto stared at Sasuke in shock. "Why would I ever hate you, Anija? You've been nothing but kind and wonderful since we met. So you have the Kyuubi sealed inside you. So what? That doesn't change you from the person I've known for the last few weeks or so." Sasuke paused to take a breath, and look up at Naruto. "You're my precious Anija and you keep us all safe from the fox. If the villagers can't see that, then they're the dumb ones. I will never hate you or think of you as anything less than what you are, a hero. One who not only keeps everyone safe from the Kyuubi's retribution, but also one who saved me from falling into darkness and hatred." The Uchiha smiled at him. "I love you, Anija, and I always will," he said. Naruto blinked dumbly for a moment, taking time to process everything that was said. When he had, he grinned widely with tears in his eyes, before he hugged his younger brother back tight. "Odoto, thank you. I can't even begin to explain how much this all means to me, but I promise, I will do everything in my power to show you how much it does. I love you so much, Sasuke. You're my most precious Odoto and I will always, always protect you and believe in you too. Not that I think you need protecting, but it is my job after all." The Uzumaki replied with a laugh. Soon after that, both boys went back to eating, feeling closer than ever. And Naruto knew that he could always trust his beloved Ototo to be there for him when he needed it. It had been a few weeks since Naruto told Sasuke about the nine-tailed fox and the Uchiha had accepted him. In between the academy, the blonde had been continuing his elemental jutsu training. With his increased chakra control, Naruto had been able to master a few fire jutsu and had deemed that enough for now. He had since moved on to lightning jutsu. Despite their new closeness and Naruto's divulgence of one of his secrets, he still hadn't told Sasuke about his bloodline or who his parents were. He needed some more time to build up the courage to do so. Unfortunately, despite his intelligence, the Uzumaki still had problems with his dexterity. With fire jutsu, he could just copy the hand signs off of Sasuke, but trying to copy them from the pages of a book is harder than a person. And his hands just didn't want to form the right shapes. Despite trying to remain calm, Naruto was getting more and more frustrated with every failed attempt to mold the signs correctly. After another failed attempt, the blonde huffed and flopped onto the ground, deciding to try and meditate to calm his mind. Feeling the familiar pull, Naruto let himself fall into his mindscape. Opening his eyes, the ninja in training found himself in front of his tenant's cage. The giant fox seemed to be asleep. Naruto didn't want to wake him, but he had the feeling that all wasn't as it seemed. He entered the cage and walked right up to the fox. Then he climbed up and sat right on the Kyuubi's nose. There was a moment of silence, before he felt something huge quickly smack him off. Slowing his movement in the air until he was just hovering, Naruto turned around to face the fox, who was staring lazily at him. He grinned. "Ha, I knew you weren't really asleep," he exclaimed, pointing at him. The Kyuubi blinked slowly. "What do you want, brat?" he asked in a bored tone of voice. Naruto crossed his arms. "Well, I thought since we're both bored, we could maybe do something to get to know each other better," he replied with a smile. The giant fox huffed. "And what makes you think I want to get to know you, or even let you get to know me?" he asked. The Uzumaki stared up at him. "Well, I already know you a little bit. I know you not just the mass of hatred everyone sees you as, but instead an actual intelligent person," he began, then grinned. "But I want to know more, and it wouldn't hurt to get to know me, would it?" "I mean we're going to be together for the rest of our lives," Naruto replied. The Kyuubi closed his eyes. "Humph, you mean the rest of your life I'm a mass of chakra. When you die, I'll just reform," he replied. The blonde nodded. "Well, yeah, but you'll still lose your form and have to redo it, right? That's basically as close as you can get to dying for a while anyway," Naruto replied. "Come on, it'll be fun," he said. The fox huffed, but the lazy way he did it made it almost seem like a sigh. "Fine, whatever, just make sure you keep your voice down, brat," he replied. The blonde Uzumaki grinned. "Great. Let's see, what's your favorite color?" he asked. The Kyuubi huffed again. "Amaranthine, a shade of purple. It was the first color I ever saw," he replied lazily. He wouldn't say what it was that was amaranthine. The brat didn't deserve that yet. Naruto thought for a moment, then looked up again. "Can you show me?" he asked. The Kyuubi rolled his eyes, before concentrating on the water at their feet. Having been in this mindscape for a long time, even when sealed he had a bit of control. The water's reflection changed to show a light metallic purple color. The boy grinned. "Cool. My favorite color is orange," he replied, looking up again. "Your turn for a question," he said happily. The fox stared at him for a long moment. "Why do you like that Uchiha so much?" he asked. The blonde perked up. "You mean Sasuke? Well, he's my Ototo, and," he paused, as the Kyuubi snorted, "he's not your brother. You've claimed him as your brother, but what is so important about that brat that you would be so attached to him? Why do you see him as your brother? That clan is full of nothing but darkness and hatred, and Sasuke is no different." What's so special about him that you would want to be his brother? He asked. Naruto looked down at the water. He was silent for a moment, before he reached down and began tracing shapes in the water's surface. If you want me to explain it, well, I don't know if I can, at least not in words anyway. It's more than just words, more than just what we call each other. I honestly don't know why I'm so attached to Sasuke or why I see him as a younger brother. But I do know that every time I see Sasuke, I feel such a strong bond with him that I can't deny it. He is my brother, even if we're not related by blood. As for why he sees me as an older brother, I don't know. But despite what he's been through, that's how he's chosen to view me. Maybe it's because despite everything he really does want an older brother. Maybe he just wants to feel safe again after everything he's been through, and he's decided that I am that safety. I don't know. But what I do know is this. The Uzumaki paused and smiled up at the fox. No matter if our ages say it should be the other way around. No matter if we're not blood related. No matter if I might end up subconsciously being compared with Itachi, Sasuke has chosen me to be his new older brother, and I will never let him down for as long as I live. Naruto smiled and his head to the side again. My turn now, he said happily. Nay. A while later, our blonde hero was taking a walk around the village, ignoring everyone else on his way to his destination. He was getting some food for dinner. It seemed without either realizing it, he and Sasuke had practically moved in together. Well, they were brothers now after all, it was only right. Despite his decision to ignore everyone, he overheard some Chunin kunoichi talking amongst each other. Did that seriously happen? Quote. One asked. The other nodded. Hi, my sensei said a tiger has broken out of the forest of death. Everyone's looking for it right now. She replied. Whoa, I hope they find it soon and it doesn't get into the village. Her friend said worriedly. The other Chunin giggled. What? You not scared, are you? She asked. At this point Naruto tuned them out again. A tiger broke out of the forest of death. That was bad. Well, they'd just stick to the village then, where the large concentration of chakra would scare it away until it was caught. Wait, what was that? He could feel someone's chakra flaring wildly in a panic. Was someone in trouble? Wait, no, that was Sasuke's chakra. It was coming from the forest. Sasuke, he cried as he dropped his shopping and leapt into the air to the top of a nearby building and rushed as fast as he could to where he could feel his brother's chakra. I'm coming, Ototo. Just hold on, he thought, forcing himself to calm down. He was terrified for his younger brother, but panicking wouldn't save Sasuke. He just had to get there as fast as he could, then he could deal with whatever was threatening his brother. There would be a time to be enraged that something had tried to hurt his precious Ototo later, but that time wasn't now. Please let me get there in time, he begged to anyone who was listening as he sped towards the forest. Nay. Meanwhile Sasuke was running for his life from the huge tiger that was chasing him through the forest. He glanced back at the animal. That thing is huge and it's smashing straight through trees, he thought as another tree slammed into the ground. It's no normal tiger, that's for sure. He turned back to face the front and jumped to another tree. I have to get back to the village. I used so much chakra during training, there's no way I can face this thing. Sasuke was tiring out quickly, he needed to get away. Suddenly he tripped on a branch and fell to the ground, slamming into it hard. The boy tried to pick himself up, but his leg screamed in protest, and he bit down on a scream of his own. Hearing a low threatening growl behind him, Sasuke flipped around to see the huge predator stalking towards him. Sasuke pulled himself backwards with his arms and his one good leg. Normally in this kind of situation he'd fight till the end, but he was in a bad spot. He had no weapons on him as he'd been training with his fire-style jutsu. He was low on chakra from said training. And now his leg was injured so he couldn't run away. Is this it? Is this how I'm gonna die? After everything, this is what kills me. Not an enemy ninja or anything. But there were so many things I wanted to do. I wanted to restore my clan and help Naruto with his. I wanted to find out why Itachi did what he did. I wanted to help Naruto achieve his dream. Hell, I haven't even awakened my Sharingan yet. I don't want to die this way. Sasuke thought. The tiger roared and leapt at him. The Uchiha covered his face with his arm. I never even got to say goodbye to Naruto. Suddenly he felt someone grab him and move very fast. Sasuke opened his eyes and gasped with relief. Naruto and Ija. He cried as he saw who held him. Naruto's eyes were steely and his face was set into a stern frown. Sasuke almost shivered at seeing it. The blonde looked down at him. Are you all right? He asked, voice carrying just a small amount of its former warmth. The Uchiha shivered. Naruto was exuding so much rage that it scared him. Finally he got his voice working again. My chakra's really low from training, and I hurt my leg when I tripped on a branch, but the tiger didn't hurt me, Sasuke replied. Naruto nodded, then turned to face his growling opponent. Go. Get as far away from here as you can, the blonde said calmly. The Uchiha nodded and limped towards the trees as fast as he could. When he got there he turned to stare at his older brother. Right now Naruto was the angriest he'd even see him. That could only mean that the tiger wouldn't be leaving here alive. It was true that he didn't know a whole lot about his ninja's abilities, but he trusted in his brother's strength. Naruto had beaten him in every spar they'd had. And he knew that those were just friendly spars. Since the blonde was now getting serious, that could only mean that he was going to see something amazing. Meanwhile Naruto wasn't glaring at the tiger, in fact he looked perfectly calm on the outside. But inside he was enraged. How dare you try to hurt my Ototo, he hissed. The Uzumaki formed the hand signs ox, rabbit and monkey. Lightning chakra began to condense around his hand, so strong it was visible. Sasuke stared, amazed at this, but, I thought a ninja had a fire nature. He thought in wonder. Even at nearly 10 years old, Sasuke knew how rare it was for anyone to have more than one chakra nature. The huge cat hissed and ran at the blonde. Naruto shot forwards in a blur of speed. Sasuke wanted to look away, but his gaze was locked on his older brother. The predator tried to swipe at the Uzumaki with his claws, but Naruto was moving too fast. He held up his hand as he ran past the animal and tore through the tiger's flesh. It fell to the ground soon after while Naruto stood from his crouching position and lowered his hand, now no longer sparking with electricity. Naruto then turned and ran back over to his younger brother. Sasuke, are you okay? He asked. The Uchiha looked up at the other boy and tried to speak, but no sound came out. He tried to stand but hissed and grabbed his leg. Whoa, easy, no standing for you, let's get you to the hospital and check out your leg, okay? Naruto asked, crouching down so that Sasuke could climb onto his back. Sasuke did so and Naruto began carrying his Ototo back to the village. He knew the questions would be coming as soon as things settled down again. He just hoped Sasuke would forgive him for keeping yet another secret from him. When they got home, Sasuke said his eyes felt strange. Upon checking them, Naruto grinned. Congratulations Sasuke, you've just awakened your Sharingan, he said. The Uchiha grinned back. Yes, finally, he exclaimed. After going to the hospital to get Sasuke treated for his injured leg and mild chakra exhaustion, Naruto carried Sasuke home on his back again. The black-haired boy didn't complain, as his leg hurt too much to walk. It turned out that he'd twisted his ankle and torn some ligaments in his leg, so walking was out for him for a while. However, that night, the Uzumaki noticed that his younger brother's mood had gone down. Naruto frowned as he brought over dinner. What's wrong Sasuke? He asked. The Uchiha sighed. It's just I'm so ga. Forget it, It's nothing, Anija, he replied, laying his head on his crossed arms on the table. Naruto quietly sat next to his younger brother. It's okay, you can talk to me, Ododo, he said gently. The black-haired boy clenched his fists. I'm so much weaker than you, he said, but it was muffled by his arms and the table. Naruto heard it perfectly thanks to his advanced senses though, and he was shocked. That's not true, he tried, but Sasuke's head shot up. It is. Is it true? You're so much stronger than me in our spars, yet I'm sure you're holding back. You can use 2 chakra natures already, you have so much more stamina and chakra. Anija, I respect and admire you, for your strength as well as your other traits, but how do you expect me to be okay about my own position when you're so strong that I can never catch up? He exclaimed angrily. Then all the anger left him and he slumped forwards onto the tabletop again. It's just like with my niece-san all over again. Itachi was always stronger and better than me at everything, and Otu-san always loved him more than me. No matter what I did I could never make him recognize me, and even when he did, it was always. But you have a long way to go before you catch up to Itachi. Why did I think you'd be like Itachi, graduating the academy at age 7 and a Chunin at age 9? Your brother had activated his own Sharingan by the time he was 8 inches every time. No matter what I did, no matter how hard I worked, it was never enough. Sasuke was crying now, sobbing at the memory of the losses he'd already suffered. I was never as good as Itachi. And that was never good enough for him. I just wanted Otu-san to love me too. I just wanted. Sasuke choked and cut himself off. He sobbed harder. And now you too. Why is it that I can never be good enough? Why? He cried, burying his face in his hands. He hated that he would never get the chance to finally make his father acknowledge him. He hated that Naruto was so much stronger than him. And he hated that Naruto was so much stronger than him. If Naruto hadn't been there today he would have died. He was alive thanks to his Anija. But he couldn't help but feel useless because of this. Now he had awakened his Sharingan from what? Being a coward, almost dying. He was so weak and worthless. If he accepted his Sharingan and it made him stronger, what would that say about him now? That he was so weak as a shinobi that he need his Sharingan to even keep up. You don't know what it's like. To have a name to uphold. To be the last of a once great and prestigious clan. To have to be the greatest just because my clan was the greatest. If they were here now at least the load would be shared, but not only do I have to be as great as everyone in my family, I have to be even more so now. My clan was wiped out by my own older brother. He killed them all. That's at least 500 family members that he killed all in a day. There were at least 300 members who were civilians, yes, but there were 200 Uchiha who were shinobi. 200 elite, genius shinobi, and to restore my clan's honor, I have to be better than all of them. Do you have any idea what that's like? Do you know how much pressure that puts me under? I have to be the best, otherwise I'd be dragging my clan's name through the mud. But I can't even beat a stupid wild cat. I'm just worthless. Sasuke buried his face in his hands and sobbed. Naruto was shocked by his younger brother's rant. He had no idea that Sasuke had had so much pressure put on him, even with his family gone. Especially with his family gone. It must feel like he's being crushed. Naruto looked down, trying to think about what to say to his Ododo. What could he say? Eventually he realized that he couldn't say anything, so instead he just wrapped his arms around Sasuke and held him close while he cried. A while later, both fell asleep, exhausted by the day's events. Nay, Naruto slowly woke up to a gold-tinted world with a water-like substance underneath him. At first he thought he was in his mindscape again, but he could feel something. A power far stronger than that of the Kyubis. It was intense, and coiled tightly. He had a feeling that if it was released it would utterly destroy him. Naruto sat up slowly, looking around. He blinked. An old man was floating above the water. The two stared at each other. Who are you? And where am I? Naruto asked. Is this a dream? The man began to speak. "'Tis not a dream, young one. 'Tis quite a precise query also for this place, but I am quite uneasy over whether thou shalt be able to connect my name with thine actions as a herald. I am he who shall achieve peace and order. My name is Hagoromo." Naruto blinked at him. Okay, this guy is obviously not from around here, and by the amount of chakra I can feel, he's also extremely powerful, he thought. On the other hand, I had foreseen that thou wouldst end up in such a state as that, Hagoromo said. Okay, so he's some kind of herald for something, and he can float, and he has such an aura of power and strength that it makes the Kyuubi seem like a kitten in comparison, the blonde thought in confusion. Now then, the old man began. Suddenly Naruto noticed his eyes. Wait, what dojutsu is that? He blurted. Hey. He was stressed. Okay. Thou dost appear to possess observant eyes. All that remains is for thee to pragmatically comprehend thy circumstances. We are in a place that is akin to the inner mind. Naruto sighed and palmed his face. Just my luck that I would get to meet someone apparently really powerful and important. But I can't understand a thing he's saying. He muttered to himself, but the sage overheard. I am an anachronism. Over the passage of much time, cultural traditions and notion and ethics have brought about significant change. Each occurrence where I cross time and meet a reincarnate, I have come to sense greatly the differences between the other and myself. Naruto's eyebrow was twitching. He could understand part of what this old man was saying, but the majority of his words were still too confusing. I was also able to formalistically regulate and learn new mores and words, however. By this point Naruto had had enough. He'd had a stressful day and his patience had run out. The blonde 9-year-old screamed and pointed at the sage. Ah! Shut up already. Your words are too confusing. Just tell me where I am, and where my Ototo is using normal Japanese. He exclaimed, not just searching for words, but there is ambiguity in scholarship. If communication of wills cannot be achieved in addition to difficulty of definition, I see that I must speak simply taking into account current idealistic and materialistic thinking. Are you sure you're human? I mean, you seem really dignified, but, the blonde said. It's not that he didn't appreciate this seemingly important figure coming to meet with him. He just wanted to know where he was and where Sasuke was. That's a bit much, don't you think? Not human. Well, maybe that ain't too far off. So anyway, Naruto was taken aback. Suddenly the old sage was talking really weirdly, even more so than before. Sorry, it's just that way of talking sounds weird coming from an old man like you. You should be just a bit more formal. Otherwise you come off sounding kind of dumb. No offense, the blonde said, twitching slightly. Now you're going too far. No. What do you mean by dumb? Well, considering how I was talking before, I guess I can't blame you for that. The sage said. So, how's that? A little better, he asked. Yes, that's great. Naruto replied. Indeed, I'm getting the hang of it too, the old man said confidently. Naruto sighed. Finally I can talk with you. So anyway, where's Sasuke? Is he back at home awake? He asked. Sasuke is within a similar space in an alternate dimension. My double is speaking with him now. Anyway, I am a person of the past, long dead. A monk who wanders through this world as chakra, crossing generations, asserting the course of Ninshu, the teachings that I developed. My name is Hagoromo, the founder of Ninshu. I am also known as the Sage of the Six Paths, Hagoromo explained. Naruto's eyes widened. He'd heard of this man, although only as a myth comparable to a god that were written in fiction books. What? The Sage of the Six Paths? Naruto exclaimed in shock and awe. Turns out he had been right about this man being hella powerful. The sage from the legends I've read about. He asked. Oh, so you know about me? Hagoromo asked. The Uzumaki blushed and rubbed the back of his head. No, not a lot, only what I've read in books from the library, he replied, embarrassed and keeping his gaze on the water beneath his feet. The sage suddenly reached out and gripped his staff. He thrust the ringed end into the water, causing it to ripple. Where it met the blonde 9-year-old's feet, the image of a young man with short brown spiky hair and bandages wrapped around his forehead appeared. He wore the same clothes as Hagoromo. You are my son Asura's transmigrant. Both stared into the water at the young man, before Hagoromo began to float over the water towards Naruto. Anyway, the conditions are all in place now. There are things I must entrust you with, the sage said. The blonde child stared up at the elderly man. Wait, what's a transmigrant, and what do I have to do with your son? He asked in confusion. Well, first of all, a transmigrant is like an reincarnate, but what has been reincarnated is specifically the chakra soul and will. And as for your second question, you, Naruto, possess my younger son's chakra after all. I'm sure you already felt Asura's presence, yes? He asked. Naruto sighed and looked down, thinking over the mysterious bond he'd always felt with Sasuke. The first thing I want to tell you about is my mother and sons. Hagoromo tapped the water with the tip of the crescent part of his shakuho, causing a ringing sound to echo through the air and the water to ripple. The Uzumaki watched as another image was cast onto the water, this time of a very beautiful and regal-looking woman with long white hair, 2 strange horns on top of her head and white eyes, like those of the Hyuga clan had. My mother, Kagaya Otsutsuki, came to this land of yours from a faraway place. She came in search of the fruit of the divine tree. The fruit is what chakra originally came from, hence its name is chakra fruit. The sage began. Kagaya consumed the fruit, attained power and subdued this land, Hagoromo continued. Naruto blinked rapidly. A faraway place. Now that sounds like an alien, he thought to himself. Mother was powerful, more powerful than any other. Some called my mother the rabbit goddess, and others came to consider her a demon. They both worshipped and feared her. Later Kagaya would birth 2 sons. I was one of them. The water had changed again to show Kagaya kneeling on the floor before 2 beds. One with a red-haired baby boy, and the other with a white-haired baby. We brothers, to atone for the crimes our mother left behind, battled the Jubi, an incarnation of the divine tree, and sealed it inside me. The divine tree, robbed of its chakra fruit, went on a rampage in an attempt to recover it, Hagoromo explained, showing the monster that the divine tree had become. The scene changed again, to show Hagoromo standing in front of a sign with 2 symbols on it. On the left side was a blue crescent moon, while on the right side was a yellow circle, which was probably the sun. 2 boys were standing on either side in front of each symbol. A boy with long brown spiky hair was standing before the moon symbol, and a boy with short brown spiky hair was before the sun symbol. They were facing each other and both performing the seal of confrontation. Much later, I had 2 sons of my own. I named the elder Indra and the younger Asura, and I taught them both ninju. But there was a huge difference between the 2. One possessed genes containing my powerful chakra and the other did not. And this difference manifested itself in a huge manner. The oldest was a genius and a prodigy, able to do everything by himself. But the younger son didn't have any talent and had to work incredibly hard as well as alongside others to be on par with Indra, the sage explained. Although you don't seem to be that alike to Asura, well, that hardly matters. There have been transmigrants who have been prodigies before. An image of the first Hokage, Hashirama Senju, appeared in the water, such as Hashirama Senju for example, Hagoromo said. Wait, are you saying that not only am I the transmigrant of your youngest son, but also Hashirama Senju, the strongest Hokage in the Hidden Leaf Village? Naruto asked in wonder. The sage nodded. That's correct. Also, Madara was the previous holder of Indra's chakra, he explained. Naruto sighed. Of course he was, the blonde Uzumaki replied. Hagoromo then returned to his tales from the past. In order to attain power equal to that of his older brother, Asura need the cooperation of others in addition to his own effort. The sage paused for a moment. While struggling though training, the power of bodily chakra, which I had bestowed upon Asura, awakened within him and he attained power rivaling his brother's. He came to understand that he was able to become strong, thanks to the cooperation and help of those around him. He learned of the love for others that comes from cherishing others, and perceived that it was love that can achieve everything. Hagoromo paused again. In the way the younger one chose to live his life, I thought I caught a glimpse of new possibilities. I divided the power of the Jubi inside of me, and named each of the pieces, and believed that the bond known as love was true power. Before that though, I named the younger brother Asura the leader and guardian of Ninshu, believing that his older brother Indra would cooperate with his younger brother. The sage looked down with deep sadness in his eyes. However, Indra didn't accept my decision. And thus from that day on interminable conflict began. The water showed the images of two giants battling each other. One was golden with markings all over it and 6 arms. The other was a huge purple warrior, armor and all. The picture faded to white, before going on to show hundreds of torii gates, weaving around in lines. Even after their flesh perished, the chakra the two possessed continued to reincarnate across time, without stopping over and over. And you Naruto are Asura's reincarnate, as I have already said. Yes, I can see it quite clearly with these eyes. Asura's chakra is firmly attached to your spirit. Naruto looked down, deep in thought. Nay. Hagoromo stared at the blonde Uzumaki, who was frowning in thought with his arms crossed. However, it seems that you had already expected something of the like to be true. Tell me Naruto, how long did you suspect that you held Asura's chakra? He asked. Naruto looked up. I never knew what it was, but whenever I was with Sasuke, I would feel such a strong brotherly connection with him also. I just had a feeling the first time I awakened my chakra properly that there was something there, something else, that didn't come from myself or the Kyuubi. The sage smiled. Ah yes, you have met Kurama now, haven't you? He asked. Naruto tilted his head. Kurama. Wait, is that his actual name? The blonde asked. Hagoromo nodded. Indeed, that's the name I gave him when I created him, he explained. The blonde was again shocked. You created the fox! Exclamation mark quote. He cried. Yes, along with all the other Biju as well. I created them from the chakra of the Jubi that had been sealed inside me. I split the chakra into 9 forms, gave each a name and considered them my children. Along with Indra and Asura I named them as my children, then sent them to different places around the world that I had chosen as their homes, Hagoromo explained. Naruto stood frozen. Before he shook his shock off, I guess I shouldn't be surprised after everything else that happened and that I found out today, he replied with a sigh. Now, I was planning on entrusting you and Sasuke with a part of my power each when I met with you, but that was going to be a long time from now, as you both are now. Your bodies can't handle my power, so I will return in 9 or so years once you have both reached a sufficient strength, Hagoromo explained. Until then, a warning for you both: beware of red clouds. Farewell. Naruto felt himself fall unconscious again, darkness claiming his mind. Nay, when the blonde opened his eyes next, he saw the ceiling of his room. Naruto blinked several times. There's no way that could have been a dream, he thought. It wasn't. A voice Naruto had only heard a few times said from within his mind. The blonde blinked again. I mean, Kurama? He asked. He heard a sigh from his mind. Damn it, why did the old man have to tell you my name? Kurama growled irritably. So that is your name? You're pretty stubborn, aren't you? You had to have your two-sama tell me what your name was in the first place, Naruto thought with a small smile and an eye roll. By what Senin-sama said, we'll meet again sometime in the future. In 9 or so years, but what did he mean by beware of red clouds? He wondered. The Uzumaki sat up and stretched. Looking next to him, Naruto saw Sasuke also lying next to him, the remains of tear tracks on his face. He sighed. They had a big few years ahead of them, he was sure. Sasuke woke up slowly, yawning widely. "Good morning," Naruto called from the kitchen as the Uchiha walked down the stairs. "Morning, Naruto." "Man, I had the strangest dream last night," Sasuke replied. Naruto smirked slightly. "Let me guess, an old man calling himself the Sage of the Six Paths appeared to you in an empty space with a pool of water underneath it, and told you that you're the reincarnation of his oldest son, right?" he asked. Sasuke sighed. "So, you too, huh?" he asked. The blonde nodded. Kyuubi confirmed that it did indeed happen, he replied, leaving out the fox's real name. He still wasn't comfortable with Naruto using it. "According to Sennin-sama, I'm the reincarnation of his youngest son Asura," he replied. Sasuke looked down. "And I'm supposed to be the reincarnation of the genius older son, though I'm not sure how well that's transferred over," he replied. The Uchiha scoffed. "Hey, maybe they both got mixed up at our births and you got Indra's chakra, while I got Asura's. After all, I was always weaker than Itachi too," he said, sounding sad. Naruto went over and gripped his younger brother's shoulder. "Now you listen to me, Sasuke, you are not weak, and this just proves it. So what if you've had a higher failure rate than the rest of your family? It's not about how many times you fail, but about how many times you get back up and try again. You are strong, Sasuke. Everything about you is, except for your will, but you just don't have as much confidence in yourself as the rest of us do. I know that one day you and I will be powerful equals, standing together against whatever threat is coming, okay? I have faith in you," the blonde said. Sasuke stared at the Uzumaki. Before he chuckled, all right, you win, Naruto. I won't stop trying to be the best I can until the day I die," he replied. Naruto grinned. "Hey, I always knew we were brothers, even if we weren't blood related. I could always feel it." Sasuke smiled a bit in return. "Yeah, I guess I could too. So, what's the plan from now on then?" he asked. Naruto smirked. "The plan is to get as strong as possible as soon as we can during these 9 years, so basically train like crazy," he replied triumphantly. Sasuke twitched. "I guess you can't be smart and mature all the time, can you, Anija?" he asked. The blonde shook his head. "Nah, that's too boring. Life's too short to take everything seriously," he replied in an ironically serious tone of voice. The Uchiha boy sighed in exasperation, but he had a smile on his face. He supposed it wouldn't be hard to get used to part of this new situation. As Naruto had already said, they were already brothers, so finding out they were also siblings spiritually didn't affect them all that much, except maybe make them a bit closer. But the other part, about being reincarnations of the sons of a man who was considered a god, that would be harder to get used to. They still had their own parents, but how should they think of Sennin-sama? Sasuke didn't know about his brother, but he couldn't really think of Hagoromo as his father, not after everything he went through with Fugaku. But having Naruto as his older brother was already natural. Except this time he was the younger brother and Naruto was the older one, even if his chakra was actually older, being Indra. Man, this was confusing. He shook his head. From now on they had more important things to worry about. Like what Sennin-sama had said about red clouds. What did that mean? "Hey Sasuke," the blonde suddenly said. Sasuke's head snapped up. "Yes Naruto, what is it?" he asked. "Do you know what Sennin-sama meant by, beware of red clouds?" Naruto asked his younger brother. The Uchiha shook his head. "No, that's what I'm trying to figure out," he replied, crossing his arms and frowning in thought. Maybe I could find out something from the books in the library," he suggested. Naruto nodded. Okay, you go check there, I'll go check the Anbu barracks, and see if anything slips through, he said. Sasuke's head shot up. What are you talking about, Anija? I know you used to pull a lot of pranks when you were younger, but sneaking into Anbu barracks? The boy asked skeptically. Naruto grinned. Oh come on now Ototo, this is a ninja village. If I could graffiti most of the buildings in the shopping district without anyone seeing me, despite shinobi supposedly getting up before dawn, what makes you think I couldn't sneak into the Anbu headquarters and secretly listen to their conversations? He asked with his grin turning into a wicked smirk. Sasuke also smirked in amusement. You are so awesome Anija, he replied. Both laughed, before they began to get ready for their tasks. Nay, Sasuke walked into the library, his form enshrouded by the image of a nondescript Leaf Village shinobi. He sent a bored look to the woman at the counter, before walking to the Shinobi Only history section. He then began flipping through each one for mentions of red clouds. Nay, meanwhile, Naruto hid in a tree after observing the way one of the Anbu acted, a shinobi called Dog. With a single hand sign, the transformation jutsu was complete and he was Anbu Dog instead of Naruto Uzumaki. After checking the coast was clear, the now silver-haired boy strolled into the headquarters of Konoha's elite. Making sure to look bored and disinterested with everyone and everything else, the academy student entered the records room. However, when he saw the room itself, his one, visible, eye widened in shock. These could be a problem, he thought as he saw the thousands of books and scrolls literally everywhere. Naruto had no idea where to start, as he looked around frantically. HMPH, hey brat, try the bingo book, information section, a voice that the Uzumaki Namikaze soon recognized said from within his mind. Naruto blinked before grinning. Hey Kurama, didn't think you'd talk to me so soon, he thought back. The fox humphed. Whatever, the old man didn't say it, but I have a feeling that this crisis in the future involving red clouds will be a danger to me too. Therefore, the more you and that blasted Uchiha brat can find out, the more likely we'll be able to prevent them from doing whatever it is that they want to do, Kurama explained, while his host climbed a ladder once he'd found the right section. Let's see, we'd probably want current information. Here it is, the most current version of the Konoha Bingo book. He paused and looked around. Better get a few others too, just in case I can have Sasuke copy the info across using his Sharingan, then return the books, hopefully quickly. Naruto grabbed the bingo books, then snuck out of the building as nonchalantly as possible. Once far enough away, our blonde hero released his transformation jutsu and ran for it. Nay, stopping against a fence, Naruto looked all around. Seeing no one, the Uzumaki breathed a sigh of relief. What are you doing with those bingo books, my boy? A very familiar aged voice from behind him asked. Naruto shrieked and leapt 5 feet in the air. Spinning around, he came face to face with a frowning third Hokage. Naruto felt a knot form in his gut, twisting and twisting and twisting tighter. The look on his surrogate grandfather's face wasn't anger or anything like that. It was disappointment. His Gigi was disappointed in him. Guilt began to burrow its way into his heart before he took a deep breath and squared his shoulders. We need to borrow these, Hokage-sama, he said, clearly and evenly. The old village leader stared at him for a long while, but this time the blonde wouldn't budge an inch. Hiruzen finally relented with a nod. All right Naruto, but I not only expect those to be put back exactly where they were, but I also want a full explanation, from both you and Sasuke-kun, understand? He asked. Naruto instantly snapped to attention and bowed. Hi, Hokage-sama. He exclaimed. When he looked up again the man was gone. The academy student shrugged, before leaping to the top of the closest building, now on his way home. Nay, The two brothers stared down at the knowledge they had acquired in the last few hours, before turning to look at each other. Are you ready to get started, Ototo? Naruto asked. The Uchiha nodded. Hi Anija, he replied.